For the longest time, we've thought of our DNA as this fixed, unchangeable blueprint we get from our parents. But what if that's not the whole story? What if our genes actually have a kind of memory, a ghost, if you will, that carries the experiences of our ancestors? Well, today we're diving into the incredible science that suggests they absolutely do. So let's just jump right into the deep end with this one question. What if the most intense experiences of our ancestors, their traumas, their fears, are somehow biologically written into our own code, shaping our lives in ways we're only just beginning to understand? All right, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll meet this ghost in our genes. Then, we'll see how our experiences can literally shape our DNA. After that, we'll look at some mind-blowing evidence, connect the dots to something called generational trauma, and this is the important part. We'll finish by exploring how we might just have the power to rewrite our own biological story.
Okay, first up, the ghost in your genes. We're about to peel back a whole new layer of inheritance, one that goes way beyond the DNA sequence you learned about in biology class.
The science that pulls back the curtain on all this is called epigenetics. And here's the key. It's all about heritable changes in how our genes are expressed. Whether they're turned on or off, but without changing the actual letters of the DNA code itself. So it's not about changing the genes. It's about changing how the body reads and uses those genes. Probably the best way to get your head around this is to think about a computer. Your genetics, your DNA sequence, that's the hardware. It's the physical, unchangeable blueprint of the machine. But epigenetics? That's the software. It's the program that tells the hardware which genes to run, when to run them, and how loud to turn them up, all based on signals it gets from the world around you.
Okay, so that's a cool idea, right? Life experiences, writing, or biological software. But how does that actually work on a molecular level? I mean, how does something like stress or diet actually leave a physical mark on our DNA?
Well, it boils down to two main mechanisms. First up, you've got something called DNA methylation. The easiest way to think of this is like a tiny chemical tag that clamps onto a gene and acts like an off switch, basically silencing it. Then there's histone modification. Now, picture your DNA all spooled up around these proteins, right? Well, this mechanism is like a volume dial on those spools, either tightening them up to make a gene quieter or loosening them to make it louder and more active. All right, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds a little like science fiction, but where's the actual proof? Well, that brings us right to our next section, the incredible, concrete evidence from some truly groundbreaking studies. Let's start with a really provocative finding from a famous animal study. What if a fear that's learned by a father could be passed down to his son without a single lesson ever being taught?
So get this, in this really incredible experiment, scientists trained male mice to be afraid of a specific smell, kind of like cherry blossoms. What's crazy is that their children and even their grandchildren were born with a heightened sensitivity and fear of that exact same smell, even though they had never, ever been exposed to it before. And the scientists were able to trace this inheritance directly to specific epigenetic changes on the genes that control the sense of smell.
And, this isn't just something we see in mice. One of the most powerful human examples comes from a tragic event called the Dutch Hunger Winter. Near the end of World War II, there was a terrible famine. Decades later, researchers found that the children of mothers who were pregnant during that famine had much higher rates of obesity and heart disease as adults. They discovered an epigenetic mark, a different methylation pattern on a key growth gene called IGF-2. It's like their mother's experience of starvation literally left a biological echo on their kids' genes. And well, studies like that lead us to probably the most powerful and honestly sensitive part of this whole story, the undeniable link between this science and the legacy of human trauma passed across generations. What scientists are finding here is it's just groundbreaking, and it's also really sobering. They've discovered what looks like a biological signature of trauma in the children of Holocaust survivors. So here's what they did. They looked at one specific gene, NR3C1, which is crucial for managing our stress response. And they found that both the survivors and their children shared similar, very specific epigenetic marks, these methylation patterns, on that exact same gene. Now, this is really important. It does not mean they inherited the memory of the trauma itself, but it does strongly suggest that a kind of biological vulnerability to stress might have been passed down. So, what does all of this really mean? It boils down to this. Inheritance is no longer just about passively receiving a genetic code.
It's an active, ongoing conversation with a biological legacy that has been shaped and molded by the real, lived history of those who came before us.
Okay, I know this can all sound incredibly heavy, maybe even a little bit deterministic, right? Like we're just stuck with our history. But that's where our final section comes in, and it's where the story pivots from this heavy legacy to one of genuine hope and possibility. It's the big question, isn't it? After hearing all of this, you have to wonder, are we just prisoners of the past? Are we locked into the biological story written by our ancestors' lives?
And the answer, which is just amazing, seems to be no. Absolutely not. Because the single most important thing to know about our epigenetic landscape is that it is dynamic. These marks, these little switches and dials, they are not written in permanent ink. And this, right here, is where the whole story flips and becomes one of real empowerment. Because these marks aren't set in stone, there's a real potential for them to be changed. Positive experiences, therapy, a supportive environment, these things could actually lead to a kind of epigenetic reprogramming. It means that resilience isn't just a psychological concept. It may be a biological possibility that we can all actively work towards. So we end up right back where we started, but we get to flip that first question completely on its head. It's no longer just about what we've inherited from the past. It becomes about what we can give to the future. What if our own experiences, the way we heal, the way we live and grow today, can help shape the biological well-being of generations we haven't even met yet? That's the profound and hopeful possibility that epigenetics leaves us with.